Good morning to you all. Hello, little man. We're back again. Part three.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for listening to Diversity of Thought. This morning, our second guest, we're joined by Dr. Kazike Prince, and he's a nationally recognized DEI executive and leadership strategist. He's the former global director of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at National Instruments, and a former senior policy advisor to Austin Mayor Steve Adler. Dr. Prince works at the intersection of equity, systems design, and executive leadership, helping organizations and communities navigate culture, policy, and change in real time. And if you follow his writing on Substack, you'll know he's been offering some of the sharpest analysis on leadership, identity, and the political moment we're in. We're grateful to have him with us today. Good morning, Dr. Prince.
Well, good morning. I mean, you make me feel real good this morning hearing you talk about me like that. So thank you.
That's what we do here. We lift each other up. And you are all those things. I have been looking so forward to having this conversation or having a conversation with you this morning on the show about DEI and other things in politics and your piece that you wrote about the senatorial race. But we'll jump into that. Let's start talking. Let's start the conversation off with corporate climate. A lot of us work in the corporate environment, and you work at the intersection of leadership, system design, and DEI again. How has the current political climate in Texas reshaped the way corporations talk about and invest in equity work?
Well, it's been a hard time. I want to be real clear with you because I think leadership in general, and this is a very general statement, there's a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety because when you have the idea of the Department of Justice coming after your business for you doing the work that you need to be doing to increase your business, to be more profitable, to make sure you're bringing the best talent possible in your organization, and you wake up in the morning and you find that the federal government, the attorney general in the state of Texas, the legislation across the state of Texas has basically made your intentions that you've been focused on over the last several years make you feel like an outlaw. And that kind of environment creates a lot of anxiety. It makes people want to pause. It makes people second guess what they're doing, despite the fact that DEI is not illegal. Affirmative action has not become illegal, but they've created an environment where even if they just take you to court, the time and energy to hire lawyers and deal with all this makes it very difficult to continue this work. And so I think in this current space that we're in, I understand the
Uh,
anxiety. I understand the anxiety, but I want to be clear. There's a lot of folks, despite all this flim flam about what DEI is and isn't, you see a lot of organizations that are still doing the hard work. They're just not promoting it maybe as strongly. They're still having conversations about, hey, we want to get the best talent here. Let's go to places like my alma mater, Prairie View A&M University, and find some of the best talent we need. Let's go to Texas Southern University because we know we have brilliant scholars in this institution. And so they know where the talent is. It's just, I think they're being a little more, I don't want to say sophisticated, but I think they're being more strategic about how they go about it and not necessarily celebrating it quite the way we did in the past. Does that make sense?
yes, absolutely. And I want to get into um, the research that's out there because I participate in a DEI. We have our teams on the job,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually been very, very helpful. And there's decades of research showing that diverse teams consistently outperform homogeneous teams, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Inside corporations. Does that performance narrative still resonate especially in a climate where companies want to show profits but are also navigating political pressure around DEI right now?
It does resonate because the research is clear, right? It's very clear that these diverse teams that you bring together, whether it be diverse thought, diverse gender, diverse educational experiences, all that makes the organization stronger. So they know that. They're not waiting for more research to come out to prove that point. They already know it. I think what you're seeing is organizations are making sometimes a slight pivot. And so, like in my work with organizations, I talk about trust building. I talk about retention, burnout. And the truth is, DEI was always focused on dealing with issues like burnout and trust and belonging. But we are, I think, oftentimes, I won't say overemphasizing, but re-emphasizing trust as a performance goal that we have, because when teams trust each other, when they feel that sense of connection and belonging, their performance is exponentially increased. And so I think the conversation just looks different than maybe we had, just several months ago. And I think that's an important and valuable pivot for a lot of organizations because it allows them to continue the work. But also maybe dodge some of the bullets that are being thrown at us, the spears that are being thrown at us by other folks. And so I think that pivot really helps us to continue the conversations because it's really clear that this work, it makes business work better. It makes it more profitable. And so I think that approach is really making a difference for organizations. So I don't think they're abandoning it. They're just talking about it differently.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's get to the core of this because there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation around affirmative action, what that is, and DEI and what that is. And my understanding is that affirmative action was governmental legislation, and DEI is just a plan for organization to widen the pool per se of applicants and going to those places where they can get those individuals. So not uh, uh, trying to have more people in those places that they can look at and then hire the most qualified person from there. Am I off, or it just explain to us what the differences are?
I mean, what you're saying is spot on because what we've had and continue to have, and we have it even more today, is a culture of exclusion that kept women, people of color, immigrants, people with different abilities, um, uh, out of the system. Where they couldn't get jobs, where they couldn't get opportunities, where they weren't getting promotions, where they weren't getting those contracts from the government. And so affirmative action was an intent to make the pie bigger because of this kind of scarcity mindset that there's only a couple of slices that we gotta wait for the master to have some crumbs off the table so we can survive just wasn't working. It never did. And so when we opened up the pie and made the pie bigger and changed our mindset to a abundance mindset, we said, oh, there's no reason for all of us to eat. We should be all eating and getting the best that our community has to offer. And so DEI was saying, okay, we got this affirmative action thing, this policy, but how are we going to go about it? One is identifying where the potholes are, who have been the folks who've been excluded, because it hasn't been everybody, whether it's white women, whether it's black and brown and other folks, people with different abilities. Think about people who are neurodiverse, who because of their personality styles were being excluded from the workforce. And then we found out actually they're really brilliant at some really great things in the workplace. And so when we opened up
Right.
the opportunities for more people to participate and enjoy the wealth of this country, what we found out is that, man, God has given us geniuses in every community. So why shouldn't we tap into the natural genius of every community? And that's what DEI always has been about. But then it has to go next layer. It's not just enough to give me an opportunity. you got to make me feel like I want to stay here, that I want to be a part of this community, that when we have celebrations and birthdays or whatever it is, I walk in the door. This is the problem I have had sometimes living in Austin. If you're white and you come to Austin, Austin is kind of like a white Atlanta. You know, people come here and they love the food and the people and the experience here. And I'm like, you know what? Nothing wrong with that. But if you're a person of color, it's a bit of a struggle. You got to put some more homework into it. You gotta go around and find out where things are. Now, it doesn't mean you can't survive here. It just means you got to put a little more effort to it. And that's what I think we're asking organizations, businesses, governments to put a little bit more investment in us so we feel like we belong and we can thrive and survive in these spaces.
Yeah, yeah. So, and as we talk about white women, a lot of research shows that while DEI programs were intended to uplift historically marginalized communities, the biggest gains have gone to white women, with far smaller increases for Black women, and especially Black men in hiring, advancement, and leadership. So, when you look at the data, what does it tell you about how DEI was designed? And what needs to change for these systems to actually deliver equitable outcomes?
Well, it's funny because that's one of the challenges that people believe that DEI had no space to be criticized. They had plenty of space to be criticized, and you're bringing up a very important one. That the biggest benefactors of DEI were white women, and I'm not saying they shouldn't benefit because they're part of the oppressed class of people in this country. But what we're finding out as well is that other groups of people were still being excluded in the process. And so I think DEI's the practitioners in this space, the policymakers, the people who are making laws, I think what we should have been doing is being mindful of this. I mean, when you looked at a lot of the DEI directors and VPs across corporate Americas, I believe the numbers were like about 70% of them were white women. And oftentimes, a lot of those people weren't even people who were experts or had training in DEI. They were in sustainability or HR, and they're like, "Oh, this is a good thing for us to do. Let's pull this in as well." And that was fine, but then they didn't bring in the experts to help them do the work effectively. And so what you had were really kind of programs that really weren't effective. They were very shallow experiences. They were like, you're like we just had Cinco de Mayo, right? And then you had some Black History stuff and some
Right.
women's stuff, and that was fine, but it didn't really change things like who we going to hire, who's going to be promoted, who's going to make more. We're going to make sure women in this organization are paid at the same rate that men are paid in this organization. Those are the real things that make a difference in people's lives, and that's where we've oftentimes had failures. And so I think what you saw were conservative movements capitalizing on those failures and saying, well, it's all wrong. They're doing it wrong. Like, no, we didn't have leadership who were supporting this. We didn't have money that backed this. We didn't have the professionals in place to actually provide the expertise to do this. And so don't cry. Don't cry from the hilltops talking about how the failure is DI when you didn't give us the opportunity to be successful in the first place.
Wow. Yeah, a very, very good point. And that leads me to my next question. Um, Given your background in executive coaching, what does a sustainable next generation DEI model look like? One that can survive political swings and still deliver measurable outcomes for marginalized communities. And as you answer, can you walk listeners through the full distinction you often make between affirmative action as a legal remedy and DEI as an organizational strategy? Because that difference gets lost in the debate. Again, I bring that lost in the current debate that shapes how people understand what's actually under attack.
Yeah, this is hard, but it's not as hard as people make it out to be. So there's a few things that I wouldn't continue if I was given the means of continuing DEI in an organization. So one of the things you saw in a lot of organizations is you had to sign on to a diversity statement. And the reason they did that was kind of from a legalese perspective. They wanted to be able to say, hey, you signed this document, you made a commitment to DEI, and now that you're not following through on that commitment, now your position is in jeopardy, or you're being considered to lose your opportunity. The challenge with that is that what you have people who are signing documents that they don't really believe in, or they're not really signed up for, or they don't really totally understand or appreciate. And so you have people who are just kind of going through the motions. So those are the kinds of things that things that are performative, that don't really create meaningful behavior change in people and understanding. Those are the things I would be abandoning. The things that I would be adopting is getting people to have real conversations. So one of the tools that I offer is called Djembe. It's a card deck experience where I get people to have real conversations about topics they typically really struggle with. It gets away from having the expert in the room who's going to tell you how it is, but really get people to talk about their personal experiences. But also the second part of it is it's really encouraging people to listen to one another. And what you're finding out when you do these kinds of things is that it builds trust, it builds understanding, it builds curiosity. And that curiosity is what makes businesses successful. Because if I come into a space thinking I know everything and I can make, my training and my experience tells me I know what's up, and I can't listen to nobody else because my stuff don't stink, you're not very good professional, and you're not going to do really good in the long term. But if you bring in curiosity, you bring in your natural genius, you bring in that desire to build trust and understanding of other people, your ability to solve problems, your ability to be innovative, your ability to make that organization make money or to fulfill their mission is increased. And so I hate to make it sound so basic, but these are things that are measurable. And I think that's the important piece here. How do we measure the impacts that we're trying to achieve in organizations? And unfortunately, it focused solely on, how many warm bodies we had in the room, how many Black people did we hire? And I'm not saying that was the wrong strategy. What I'm saying is that there's other things that we can evaluate when we're trying to determine how effective an organization has been in trying to create a sense of belonging, how is trying to create a culture of inclusion and innovation. Those are things that are measurable that organizations can spend time on training. They can work with their management to build that kind of experience across the organization. And over a period of time, what they should see is an exponential change in how the organization is run, so people feel like they're a part of the organization. But also, secondly, their profitability should go up because, again, as you mentioned earlier,
Right.
diverse teams just perform better. But I'm just trying to give you a solid kind of example of the kind of work that's necessary for this to be effective across organizations. Does that make sense?
And so, yes, it does. And I want to get into the equity because, the song that you came in on was the For the Love of Money by the OJ, right? So companies want to make more money. We want to make more money. So the equity portion of this and measuring those changes as corporations, we're getting together, we're meeting, we're learning about each other, we're exchanging ideas. But when it comes down to the people that are working there at the organizations and the ones that are being hired in, how are those changes being made insofar as salaries, initial salaries? How are we gauging who is promoted to management, who's promoted to the C-suite? What areas are those individuals in from a gender, race standpoint? Are they in the STEM areas of the organization, or are they in the supporting areas of the organization, like legal and HR, like you mentioned? How can we get them to push that information to the forefront so that we can see and measure the effectiveness of what's being done?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the biggest challenges I've had when I've worked with organizations as a consultant or being inside an organization itself is that what you find out is that a lot of folks just don't have the relationships with the people that we're talking about. They don't know any Black folks who are doing the things that we're talking about. They don't know any women like Latinas. They don't know someone who's a neurospicy or neurodiverse. They just don't know anyone. at least they don't know anyone overtly who serves in these roles. And so oftentimes the work that I did was making sure they were connected with the right people who were the right resources so they can make the connections that were necessary. So again, like I mentioned before, it was connecting a business with universities that had the kind of talent that we're talking about. And what you found out is that when they were looking at talent, and they're like, I usually go to University of Texas or Rice University, but you know what? Those folks over at Prairie View and Texas Southern, man, they're brilliant. And you know what? They're not just brilliant; they're far overqualified. They're surprised how well qualified they're coming into the space. But I only mention that as an example because it starts with relationship. And so it's going to your commissioner who knows the people in the space that you're trying to gain access to, but you don't know anyone. You don't have any idea where to start. But you work with someone like myself. You go out to the black commissioner in your county or the activist that you know or you saw on TV, and you reach out to them and you say, you know what? My organization has these goals. We're trying to achieve these things, but we have no idea where to start. It's building those relationships so you can tap into those talent pools so you get to know those lawyers, those accountants, those activists, whoever you're needing to be a part of the organization. And it very much starts with, one, building relationships, but also when you're thinking with an organization, building some accountability. There's many people who talk a good game about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they're not holding themselves or the people around them accountable. And so I was a real big fan of going to executives and saying, hey, your pay increase, your bonus is directly connected to your ability to go out and find that talent. Because now you've made it a part of you know what they say, messing with my money is like messing with my emotions. And so, and so you want to mess with those people's emotions as much as possible to motivate them to see how this is a part of their own personal success. And what you find in organizations that do that, when you see people do that, man, their motivation changes. They go meet people, they go and talking to folks. I met this guy who was a Navy SEAL, and his job was go recruit more black and brown folks to be part of the Navy SEALs. And he'll be honest with you. He's like, you know what? I know where to start. I got one black friend. We hang out once in a while, but I had to go find some real talent out there. So he started going to the universities. He started spending time in spaces that he was uncomfortable with and never been in. But he said, you know what? If I got to achieve this goal, I have to take these risks and go out in spaces that are unfamiliar to me. And so that again, that relationship building, that curiosity, that risk taking is what's necessary to do this work effectively.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're listening this morning. We have Dr. Talarico Prince. He is a nationally recognized DEI, global DEI executive, and he is sharing with us this morning. 713-668-1230, 713-668-1230. We'll take a break, get any callers in to so that you can ask Dr. Prince a question, any questions that you might have. Let's see here. When you look at the move to eliminate or weaken H-Hub and MWBE programs in Texas, what does this moment reveal about how state values minority-owned businesses in the communities they anchor? And just talk about that in general, as we know that it's been eliminated actually in Texas.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because to me, it's an injustice. It's hard to find words to talk about this. I don't know if I had shared with you, but I'm the board chair for the Black Chamber of Commerce here in the Central Texas area, and
Oh, wow.
so we're kind of confronted with this challenge because I'll be honest, I think there's people from the NAACP and other organizations who are fighting this legally because the way they went about it was, I think, unconstitutional. But, we have to go to the courts and fight the good fight and hope that we'll win in the end. Because the way they went about it was even shady. Basically, it's this kind of edict from up high here in the Capitol saying, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. Well, there was no debate. There was no kind of, going to the representatives across the state to kind of have this conversation. They just went ahead and did it. and made some kind of really weak legal argument for doing it. My hope is that will get people kind of get some fire under them to fight this as much as possible. Because truth of the matter is, Hub was great for organizations, and I think it made a big difference for a lot of organizations. But it was also having some challenges as well, because every time you were holding these organizations accountable for having contracts with more women and people of color, you found out they weren't doing a really great job. But then on top of that, they decided, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. And so to me, it's a travesty. And to be honest, I just watched a story online about how this has been a war on the Black community. You know, you think about the number of Black women who've lost their jobs. You think about the number of contracts that have not been renewed or even considered because there was this impression that somehow because we Black, we must be around DEI. I mean, just it's a travesty. And it's, to be honest, it's saddening because the amount of wealth that's been lost. I mean, we already know that our unemployment rate is in like above 7%. And the problem is that these things are impacting our communities, our Black and brown communities, and we're seeing it. We're having conversations about it every freaking day. But too many people, and I'll say this, I think it's too many people who are of wealth or maybe who are white who are disconnected to this. So when you mention this thing about the hub, they're like, well, this doesn't impact me, so I guess I shouldn't really care. They should care, because when we can't get these contracts, we can't keep these jobs, and we're being fired, our ability to maintain our mortgages, our ability to participate in society is diminished. And we can't participate in the ways that we want to. And they wonder, well, why those folks ain't doing what they're supposed to? Because y'all won't let us. You get in our way. I know this Black Republican, he says, I ain't worried about these white folks. All I need them to do is get out my way. And I'm like, I don't agree with you. Well, I don't agree with you on most things, but with that thing, I do. Just get out our way.
Yeah.
And right now, they're getting in our way every way they can imagine, taking away Hub. You can't have conversations around race or anything else in our public school systems. It's really a injustice. But I want to say this: I remain optimistic. And the reason I say that is because we just had the Black graduation. We just had the Black graduation here at the University of Texas at a church here, the Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church. Those are the kinds of things I'm glad to hear our community is stepping up to provide a source, to provide space, to provide intellect and opportunity, despite the state deciding that they're not going to do it anymore. And so you see churches stepping up, you're seeing nonprofit organizations stepping up, providing space, providing expertise, giving food, basically doing the things that we did before. Because I'm not that old, so I don't remember too many of these things. But there was a time we had to do all this stuff by ourselves, and it was a privilege to have the state to come in and say, you know what, yeah, you can use our space. But now we're going to go back to good old days where, I hate to say it that way, but the days where we sometimes had to meet in secret to have conversations about how we're going to fight the system. And I think this is the situation we're in, where whether it's in secret or in public, online or on the radio, we're having to continue these conversations to continue this fight, because we can't let them win. We can't just bow down and say, all right, massa, here you go. No, we have to fight. And so despite all these negative things that are happening right now, I am pleased to see how strong we are fighting against this.
And things are coming together. We have a lot against us, but I am pleased as well to see the number of people who are talking, the number of talented, like you say, talented and brilliant people that we have out there that are pulling things together on our behalf. So, Dr. Kazike, can we take a couple of callers before I get into the political segment of our conversation?
Sure, I love it, love it, love it.
Okay, I'll let Paris. Let's get someone on.
Hello, caller, you're on.
Hey, good morning, Lydia Paris. This is Dr. DK. I think I'm saying your name correct.
Yes.
Dr. Prince, yeah, Kazike Prince.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Dear brothers, I just want to say, those who tried to pull this on us, I would like to give a new acronym to them as well, because what they did was just nothing but a dumb executive ignorance. That's all I have to say about them. Now, you mentioned the Greater Zion Baptist Church. How often do you receive invitations from churches, civic clubs to actually come and speak? Because they have to live long enough to even notice that even the churches have bringing people that sit right there in the pulpit, but they never get asked to address the people in which they sit among. And I wonder how often do you ever get any type of invitation like that? And I listen. Thank
Well, thank you for the question. One of the things I found out here in Austin, and I imagine you see this across our beautiful state of Texas, is that you have some churches who don't want to get into the political space, right? They want to speak about the prosperity ministry that they're focused on. They want us to walk away feeling good. And there's a place for that. I'm not mad about that. But there's other churches who have taken a strong investment, like Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church, my home church, which is David Chapel Missionary Baptist Church here in Austin, where the ministry, the congregation have taken a strong investment in our community. And they do things like host graduations for our UT graduate students. They do programs. They actively are involved in our economic prosperity. And to be honest, those are the churches that I tend to be the ones to attend and be a part of. The ones that don't, they serve a different need and they have a different community that they serve. So I'm not hating on them. I'm just saying I think we have to be selective about the congregations and communities that we support when it comes to these politically hot topics. And so, they all serve a different purpose. I tend to go to the ones that have, matter of fact, the pastor over at Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church, I reached out to him when I ran for office. I ran for a school board position. The very first question he asked me, he said, "Dr. Prince, what have you done for the Black community?" I said, "Well, I got 2 Black kids." So my investment as a father in their life and their livelihood and their success and their prosperity is the best thing I can do. And so that's where I start when it comes to the Black community, is taking care of my own. But I could go on and on about my grandmother and all kinds of things. But that's the kind of stuff I love to see in our community. They test us, but it's our job to stand up and be responsive.
And it's okay if you mention your grandmother. Are you from Texas originally?
Oh, yeah, I'm from Fifth Ward, baby.
Oh, okay. I don't think I read that in the bio. I must have skipped over that, but
That's all right. I'm from Fifth Ward. I'm part of that Prince clan out there in Fifth Ward. Now, I didn't grow up there long term. My mother, she was from a small town in Coleman, Texas, West Texas, and my parents are part of that exodus from the South back in the '70s. And went to California, and we came back. I went to high school in the Dallas area, but my grandmother, Frances Prince. Unfortunately, she passed early this year, but she lived until she was 104, and so she was she was all of our, I should say, our she was foundation, and we would have our annual family reunion, and I'll be honest, it feels a little different now, but Fifth Ward is still home for me. I still go back, and I have plenty of family there, and we doing our thing.
okay, I like it. So we have another caller, Paris.
Good morning, Colleen. You're on. Hey, good morning, everybody. Dr. Prince. I'm interested in your point of view from an executive point of view. Listen, I saw what Biden signed this executive order implementing DEI back in roughly 2020, something like that, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so let's say that I accept the idea that DEI is a positive concept. Whether it be rhetorical or academic.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's so positive, then why would anyone associated with it have a negative feeling about it?
Good question. Good question. This is the thing. I think that you find that anyone who's a practitioner in this space understands the ugliness that comes with these conversations, because white supremacy is what we're fighting, right? It's ugly. It's led to the death of, a huge number of us in this space. And so the reason why DEI, I think, is something that we have adopted is because we're trying to save people's lives. We're trying to save we're trying to maintain our dignity. And so the reason why we've adopted DEI is because we're trying to survive a war on the Black community, a war on women, a war on all kinds of groups of people. And so, unfortunately, what you've had is that you've had people who are anti-DEI, who oftentimes don't even know what DEI is. And so that's why you see some people saying diversity, equity, and inclusion, because their idea of DEI has nothing to do with what it actually is. It's kind of like how we've seen people try to redefine the term woke. They're anti-woke. Well, what is woke? Well, they get to stuttering. They don't know what they're talking about. And so I would say the people who actually know what DEI is, we are very proud of what we're standing up for, because we're trying to save lives. We're trying to make sure people have their dignity when they walk away. We want to have people to be part of this huge American dream that we've been talking about. But the folks who oftentimes who shout it down, they have no idea what DEI is. They have no idea that ramp for their grandma to get on her wheelchair to get in the building is DEI. The promotion that someone received in I'm sorry.
Yeah, that has been my experience, though. When the concept is brought up, even for people supporting, if you even suggest they may have benefited from DEI, they have a negative reaction. But,
Yes.
my point of view, DEI has been a failed concept. It's a failed concept. It was built to failure when the court ruled against affirmative action. But the reason it fails on my point of view is in its implementation. And when I hear you ask the question about the difference between DEI and affirmative action, all the explanation that has to go into trying to define DEI, it doesn't surprise me that anybody can come into court and undermine this concept, because
Okay.
it takes so much explanation for people to understand what it is.
Okay. Well, we'll let Dr. Prince respond to that caller. We got some other people holding on as well.
No doubt.
Thank you.
And
All right, Dr. Prince, you want to respond to that?
yeah, I mean, his point is, I think, somewhat, legitimate, because the truth of the matter is this conversation requires nuance, right? But if I were to say this in basic terms, DEI is about saving lives. It's about making sure people maintain their dignity, and there's different ways of doing that. That's the simple way of saying it. But the truth is the implementation is nuanced. It requires a level of sophistication and understanding of people's experiences, lived experiences, to create the kind of change that we're looking for. And so if we're trying to make DEI some kind of easy thing that we can keep score with, and kind of like watching a football game or basketball game and make that simple, well, then we probably going to lose. But if you're trying to understand the nuances that require it so people walk away with their dignity and respect, and lives are being saved, then I think it requires a more nuanced conversation, because white supremacy is sophisticated. And if we respond with
Yeah.
simple responses, we're not going to get where we want to get.
And I think that's intentional.
Yes.
To cloud DEI. I think that that's intentional. That it has to be nuanced. It can't be a direct response to it. I think that that's intentional, Dr. Prince.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, it is.
So let's get back to the question quickly here. Before the primaries, and we're going on to the political portion of the discussion now. Before the primaries, I shared on this show that I felt the Democratic Party wasn't leading with the African American community in mind,
Mm-hmm.
and that we needed to be far more intentional about leveraging our vote as we head into the midterm. And with the Senate race being the most recent example, your piece really stood out to me, What moved you to write it, and how were you thinking about identity, tone, and electability as you shaped that analysis? And just tell us what the name of the piece was, and just go into that conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll be honest. I was, this was a few weeks ago, and the motivation behind it was if I was in James Talarico's position. Now, mind you, I'm 6'2". Talarico is not. I'm black. Talarico is not. But I said if I was James Talarico, what would I need to do in this moment to deal and respond effectively to I think the real concerns the black folks have in this state about electing him? And this is after the whole thing with Colin Allred. Because what people forget is that when Colin Allred got on the internet to make his statement about what he thought had happened and what he had heard, he wasn't talking to white America. He was talking to black folks, saying, look, black folks, this is what I heard. This is what's on the street. And I need you to understand
Right.
this has been my experience. And people don't understand that's who his audience was. And to be honest, that was one of the first times I felt a certain level of excitement about Colin Allred. I don't know the brother from a hole in the wall, but when he said that, I was like, he talking to us, y'all. And so when I was putting this blog together, I said, understanding the context of the situation. What is he needing to do to build the connections, the trust, the excitement that he's going to need if he's going to win this election? Because a lot of folks just don't trust him. They don't know him, right? And where I started is with people who I know who I trust, who are black, who know James Talarico, who speak volumes of the things he's done, the kinds of conversations they've had with him. And what I noticed was that a lot of folks just don't know him. And to be honest, that's kind of an Austin problem. We have some really good-natured white folks here who are doing some really great work, but they don't have the kinds of relationships with the black and brown community to build the kind of cultural credibility that they need. And so, assuming James has the best intentions in his mind, I think one needs to acknowledge that, people are upset with him not because of what he may have said. They're upset with him because we've seen this before, where white folks say one thing and do something else. And to call that out and just talk about it, say, hey, I know I know y'all have reason not to trust me. And you know what? And what happened earlier this year with Colin Allred and James with this election, I think your fears and frustrations are legitimate. But just calling it out and building that trust and being honest about it. And so I think that kind of
Right.
transparency can be really effective. It may not answer everyone's questions because there's a few I've had some feedback, I'll call it, from some brothers and sisters, and they still like, I don't care what you say, I ain't voting for that man. But my belief is this: it's still early. We still have several months between now and the election in November. And this is the opportunity that James has to go out. I mean, I know he's at Prairie View not too long ago. I know he's been doing the circuit around the black churches. I got the pleasure of meeting him here in Austin. Some folks here brought some black leaders together. I felt honored to be included part of that conversation. We met at a black-owned restaurant here called Kanje in Austin. Delicious food, by the way. But that's the kind of thing he's going to have to do to build those kinds of relationships so they can ask him the hard questions, so he can listen to their frustrations. And I think if he does that, he will be effective. But time will only tell. Now, I'll tell you what I told him. I said, bruh, I need you to black it up. I need you to black it up. I need you to show up. I need you to show up. I need you to talk to us. I need you to listen to us and hear us. And because if you don't do this, man, you're gonna miss out on the opportunity. And I think
Yeah.
I genuinely think he is trying to do that, but it's gonna take time. And with summertime coming, Mother's Day is on Sunday. We got other priorities. My hope is when people have time to pay attention, they'll ask the hard questions. And my hope and prayer is that he'll be responsive to those questions and concerns that we are presenting to him.
And I hope so as well. And that's why your piece just resonated so much with me, because as I had the opportunity to interview both Jasmine Crockett and him before the primary.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spoken with him a little bit after, him and his team. But same sentiment as you. And my thought was, as I'm speaking to the listening audience here, in my opinion, for me, having to give my opinion, it's like until, and they did say that they were going to visit the station again, until we get this, um, until we get the conversation like you were talking about, where he is addressing what's going on in our communities, how he's going to address these things specifically, and having this conversation with Black people, not just going to Black spaces, okay, because we get a lot of that, but we want to hear some commitment about what he's going to do when he gets there, because we could, the other person that was running, we already saw what she was doing, and we want somebody that's not going to necessarily pull us to the middle or pull people to the middle of the Democratic Party, but we want people to address where we are right now. And like you say, it's a few months until the election, and unless he can have those conversations, which I don't know if he's having those yet, and I don't know if he can have those based on who his funding is coming from, and when he and the other people that he's trying to get to the polls as well, because they're thinking that some of the MAGA people he could possibly pull, and so I don't know if he's going to be able to walk that tightrope. I have my doubts.
I have my doubts too, but I think there's a lot to be learned from the former mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington. And one of the things that he did, and Barack Obama followed the same model, it was building that coalition, right? So it's reaching out to the Black community, the LGBTQ community, women, people, working class, who are in the trenches, or folks who are doing well economically. It's building that coalition, and he had a way. I mean, using again Harold Washington's model, he had a way of his charisma, his ability to really talk to us, and also there was a consistency. You didn't feel like he was going to say one thing to one group and another thing to another group, and I think that's the challenge that I think Talarico is having right now. People are curious, if not suspicious, justifiably, that when you're in the room with a bunch of white folks, conservative ones particularly, are you saying the same thing? Because I've been in those spaces. When I worked for the mayor here, I would see him in front of his friends and some good-natured folks, and I mean, hey, I'm working for this guy, but I'm having that same curiosity. Like, is he going to say the same thing here as he says in the office? And one of the most refreshing things I experienced was to see that consistency, because I had reason to believe that it wasn't going to happen. But when it happens, you're like, man, finally. So I think that's what trust is all about. Consistency. It's who you say you are. And I think the challenge really here is about what happened with Colin Allred, that whole fiasco. But I think that instead of ignoring it, he has to attend to it. And I think my understanding, he is attending to it, but we'll see over the next several months. And I'll say this last thing.
Yeah.
The thing I hear you talking about is, um, he's supposed to be talking to us, right? But we don't know if he actually is, because we don't have our friends coming to us saying, hey, I heard from James Talarico XYZ. And so it's but for me, I've had the privilege of knowing other activists here in Austin who are Black, who are credible in my mind, who have had conversations with him. My hope is that he'll continue to have those conversations, not just here in Austin where he's from, but in Houston, in Dallas, and other places across the state, so people can vouch for him, because no one's going to trust him if no one's going to vouch for him.
Right, right. Okay. Well, we've got 3 people on hold that want to talk to you, Dr. Pratt.
Okay.
So let's get them in here.
All right.
Okay, Jerry.
All right. Hello, caller, you're on. All right. Hey, Lily, happy Mother's Day coming up.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Prince.
Yes.
Man, look, DEI. I was around when that concept, the federal government brought that concept into fruition. that was about diversity, equity, and inclusion because minority people, black and brown and women, wasn't getting the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so they told the federal government, the president, whoever it was at that time, man, y'all got to do something about this. We qualified, we've been to college, we had certificates, diplomas, degrees, and we qualified for these jobs, but these people will not hire us based on who we are,
Mm-hmm.
what we look like.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that bad, and that's where the DEI concept came from. And wow, man, it's just ridiculous. I don't understand what our current president don't understand about this. He's saying like, oh, just because you were black, you got the job. No, first and foremost, you had to qualify for the job. You had to have a resume in order to get the job. Maybe his life got the job, but no, you had to meet the qualification. And a redistricting, I just think, man, we have to vote in record numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Democrat. I'm going to say it like that. Because the Republicans already got federal hold on it. So we're going to have, in order to get some checks and balances, the Democrats going to have to come out in record numbers and vote.
Yes, very much so. And I would say one of the biggest things, despite what's happened at the Supreme Court, I think this is a clarion call to all black folks. I know sometimes we feel like our vote doesn't matter, but I'm telling you, we have to vote. We have to get out there and vote and make our voices known. But back to the DEI thing. I mean, the alternative is what we're seeing currently. We got the President of the United States hiring and appointing unqualified people to fulfill positions they have no capacity to respond to. You look at every person on his cabinet, they're unqualified. That's why affirmative action was started. We had people who were failing up, doing jobs, having responsibility for millions of dollars, and doing horrible jobs. DEI was about leveling the playing field, but bringing real talent into their organizations. So the alternative with anti-DEI is to bring in the most incompetent people to do the job? That makes no sense. And so when people say, I don't know if I support DEI, well, you support incompetency? You support failing up? We want the best talent here across every community. That includes white men.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Protects everyone. Wow. So anything else, caller?
No, he's gone.
He's gone. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's get one more on. Let's get one more.
Hello, caller. Hey, Dr. Press.
Yes.
Coming out of you, man. Hey, Dr. Press, man, you clarified that you got roots in the Fifth Ward, man. So I had called off to you, but what school did you get your PhD from, and what's your PhD in, Dr. Press? I had another question, but
Yeah, I started over at Prairie View. That's where I got my undergrad degree. Then I ended up at Rutgers University, New Jersey, for my master's, and then I got my PhD in counseling psychology at the University of Georgia in Athens. I was I'm a psychologist by training. I was a clinician for a number of years and left the clinical field to become a consultant focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion.
Great. So, and Dr. Prince, as we have said, man, we cannot depend on the Supreme Court. You know what I'm talking about? And they come up, they 5 minutes come up with a law sale, and we let you go on back, and then I think we got a misunderstanding of what EEO, equal opportunity.
Right.
Actually, all the equal opportunity was all about contracts. That's the document. I'm gonna give you a contract, but you gotta have parents, and you gotta have linear, and you gotta have come on, that's so do you understand? So, and that is what Governor Albert did. He just gives us I gotta take $1 million from you, because you broke rule number 3. So, hey, Dr. Clifton, all
Love that. I love that.
Ray Tyrell, he is a Marine.
All right.
So thank you for your service with Bobby Ray Tyrell. So let's talk about when you talk to young Texans
Mm,
who feel discouraged or
mm,
disconnected from the
mm,
process.
mm-hmm.
What's the one thing you want them to understand about their power? Not just in elections, but in shaping the future of Texas as AI transforms work, civil rights protections are being tested, and DEI becomes a part of the conversation about who gets access to the jobs of tomorrow.
Mm. I appreciate you asking that because one of the things I'm reminded is that white supremacy, as it is currently built, is intended for us to feel a sense of loss, desperation, a sense of there's nothing we can do, right? And so I to remind young folks and folks my age, 55, stay alive. Um, and I remind us that the system is built for us to feel exactly the way we feel, the things that we're seeing, the craziness that we're involved with today. And I remind young folks, I said, some of the biggest civil rights activists that we are aware of across our history and even today were young folks, people who were in their early 20s. Martin Luther King died before he was 40. I mean, so a lot of things that people think is something that's left for those folks, those older people, those people who are more established. If you look at our history as a country, going back to slavery and following, a lot of folks who were doing things were young people because they had the energy, they had the enthusiasm, they had the righteous indignation to say, no, this is no longer right. And so I encourage young folks. I love watching my son and daughter, and when we start having these conversations, I'm just like, man, I'm so glad you have energy because sometimes I'm tired. So we need their energy. We need their creativity. We need them to buck the system. But I would also say this to folks who are more established, who are a little bit older, a little more seasoned, to make room for them. Because we kind of get comfortable the way things are. We kind of think, well, I've been here for 20, 30, 40 years. I know better. And we sometimes don't make room for young folks. And so we have to invite them. We have to say, you know what? Come on, young buck. Come on, NG. Come on over here and let's do this.
Uh-huh.
And and I think a combination of us inviting them, but also them standing up and making their voices known, I think is exactly what needs to happen for us to really create the kind of change we're looking for. Because the truth is, we're all suffering. We just oftentimes we're doing it in isolation, and then when we speak up, we're like, "Oh, you going through that too? Oh, wait a minute, hold up. What we gonna do about this?"
Yeah, yeah. The technology that brings us together a lot of times makes us operate in that space. So thank you for that. We got one more caller, and then we're going to wrap things up with you, Dr. Prince.
All right.
Let's get that last caller on, Bo. Me.
and Dr. Prince. So you're from Fillmore. I mean, the people from Fillmore, right?
That's right.
Okay. Are you into Jay Prince?
Yes, I am. He's my cousin.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now, into that name. So, so talk about collaboration with other groups and demographics that folks share in the same rights that we've been trying to fight for other people for. So, in these collaborative groups that we have, do you think that they're actually fighting for what I would consider to be, and I guess we need to put this together, or any groups that we collaborate with, a black agenda? to give to Talarico, but get him to commit to some of the things that we want to see happen.
Yeah, I would say that we have a common interest here, whether it's the Black community, LGBTQ community, faith community. We all have a common interest because the truth of the matter is, he started off coming after Black folks and came after trans community, but he's gonna the Trump and the white supremacy, they're eventually gonna come after all of us because many of us are not going to fall in line with the nonsense that we see coming down the pike. And so I think the common interest of the Black, the Latina, the LGBTQ, of women, of all different kinds of groups of people, we have a common interest because we're seeing that our opportunities are being erased. We're seeing our sense of belonging not being accepted. We're experiencing injustice. We're losing our lives. And so I think when you see that kind of common challenge, I think I think this is the challenge, but I think whether it's Talarico or someone else has to be the one who's in the room, in the basements, in people's homes, breaking bread over dinner, having those real conversations and building those real relationships. And anyone who's been successful at this, like the Harold Washingtons of the world, that's how this is done. And so it's not going to be the speeches that he gives at some church somewhere or at some big, special location. It's going to be in the intimate conversations he has at kitchen tables for breakfast and lunch and dinner. And those are the conversations going to bring us together because they're going to ask the tough questions and they're going to ask a real basic question. What is an end for me? What is this in for me? And if he's not responding to that question in an articulate, meaningful way, they're going to look the other way. But I have faith that he has some of the right people around him who are going to help respond to those kinds of questions, concerns that people have, so we can build that coalition that you're talking about.
Yeah, because I think Benjamin's already here.
Say it one more time.
When you say eventually I say eventually is already here. They're already coming after us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, it's happening it's been happening for the last, what, several decades. We now just have a president. Yeah.
All right.
Got you, Bo. Thank you. Thank you, Bo. And I'd like to add to that as well. A lot of what's happening right now is, I'm sure you follow a lot of the other groups, the Mexican, Hispanics, and others, don't necessarily agree with or may have a different mindset about the African American community. And remember that we're talking about the Civil Rights Act that was brought to fruition by our ancestors, right?
Right.
And so the respectability politics that has gone on, because all red was one aspect of that, but the other aspect of that was the response to Jasmine Crockett.
Yes.
And the electability comment that actually, those young voters I'm talking about. I've got campaign going on now, young voter campaign, and have them on the show, and so they voted for her en masse. We know now. She had votes from other communities as well, but the majority of it was from the African American community and young people. And so they see this with this electability, through this electability lens that was being discussed by Democratic leadership, the whole vibe that was there. And I'm saying that a lot of folks are tired of the respectability politics and saying, we want a coalition, but a lot of times people don't want to coalesce with us. And so what we have to do, we still have to pick up that mantle. We're still going to pick up that mantle and move forward with it. So to say that, okay, I can't speak specifically, but all of you have these concerns. No, we need you, and that's where these young people are saying, we need you to speak to us specifically, and not in the same breath. You could bring up the coalition, that's fine, but we can't always count on the coalition.
Mm-mm.
So all of these things that have been neglected, we need them addressed.
Yes.
And so I don't know. Is he going to be able to talk like that? Not just in the basements at the kitchen tables, but publicly where these young people are on social media
Oh yeah.
and other places.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I think that's the not so new at the dynamic that, how do you, it's not just the in-person experiences, but it's the online experiences. And I hope that we have some young people as part of his team so he can come up with some of that innovative social media stuff that can be really powerful and really, very, I mean, one of the things we noticed with the Mandami election in New York, which is a totally different situation, he had a way of relating to people across different backgrounds, and it was partly because of his social media presence. And so, but this is a challenge. Mandami is not Talarico; they're just different personalities, right? But I, but I would also, I mean, not but and I think that intimate conversation is really important because, again, historically, we have found that it was folks going to the Latinx, Hispanic, whatever the preferred term is, and having real conversations. Because the truth is, there's issues of racism within the Asian community, within the Hispanic community,
Yeah.
and so there's been some barriers. And so we have to deal with those barriers. And how do we get on the same team? Because the truth is, Paxson and Cornyn have no interest in supporting the interests of Black and brown folks,
Right.
straight up. And so, how do we get on the same team? What do you need, and what do I need, so we can move forward?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, we'll still continue to work on building those coalitions,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Prince, because you're correct. We do need them, and we will continue to do that. But at the same time, we want to speak up for, what we need in our communities
Exactly.
as well.
Exactly.
So, uh, producer, host of the Morning Magazine, the producer for me today, Paris Ely, has a comment.
Yeah, look, I just wanted to let both of you know, Dr. Prince, you may know this already, and Lydia, I don't know if you've seen this by now, but the Virginia Supreme Court did block the referendum that would have helped the Democrats win up to 4 more U.S. House seats. So they
Yeah.
have ruled on that in the Virginia Supreme Court. I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. I don't know whether you were moving around at that time or whether you had heard it already anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
so the Supreme Court, the Virginia State Supreme Court there has overridden the people's right to convene that referendum question and put it on the ballot to the electorate. That's so. It's just more work ahead. That's all. We got to do it.
Yeah. More work. I love that. I love that. More work. We've been working for a long time.
Dr. Prince, Fifth Ward brother, thank you for sharing your insight and helping us make sense of the systems, shaping leadership and representation in this moment. Before we let you go, can you share with our listeners where they can follow your work, whether it's your Substack or consulting practice or any platforms you want folks to stay connected through?
Well, thank you so much. The good thing is that I'm the only Kazike Prince you're gonna be able to find on the internet. So if you just type in my name, you're gonna find me. But I'm on Instagram. I have a webpage, of course. I'm on Substack. I'm on TikTok. But the thing I want to emphasize, I actually have a program coming up on May 19th. It's called Plates and Perspectives. And we're basically bringing people together. They have these conversations across differences, but also have some delicious food and just really have a good time with one another. So just look me up and you'll find me easily with no problem.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for being here with us this morning. We really appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you again, Dr. Brett.
Well, thank you so much and have a great weekend.
You too. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, to everyone. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay.
Deep throat.